story time again today. Only today's review is a little interesting because today's review is on Red Rain by R.L. Stine. Now, what's interesting about this particular book is that it is one of the only few adult novels that R.L. Stine has written. I mean, yeah, I guess you could say that Fear Street is, aimed more towards an older audience, but it's still technically geared towards teens. This, however, is strictly aimed at adults. Now, the only other adult novel R.L. Stine has written is a book called Superstitious, written back in 1995, which I have not read yet. However, I hope to do so soon. Now, this story centers on Lee Sutter, a travel blogger who goes to a remote island known as Cape Le Chat Noir to write about the fascinating rituals that are done there. In the midst of all of this, though, a deadly hurricane ends up hitting and ends up killing hundreds of people. Now, as impressively scary R.L. Stine wrote the hurricane to be, the aftermath of it was pretty depressing to read about. Because I'm talking children were fucking literally trapped under rubble, dying, screaming for their parents. Children were screaming and crying because they couldn't find their kids, or their kids were literally trapped under rubble, dead. Now, obviously being in the midst of all of this, Lee Sutter obviously experiences some trauma from it, and as a result, she ends up wanting to do something to help out with the disaster somehow. And eventually, she ends up discovering two lonely twin boys named Samuel and Daniel. Now, Lee falls in love with them right away, but then she decides, wait a minute, these two boys, they have no parents, no one to look after them, and this is a very, horrifying crisis that they're going through. This could have a really, really horrifying impact, really devastating impact on these two boys, especially since they don't have anyone, to turn to for security or comfort. So, as a result, she ends up adopting the two boys. Only thing is, when she takes the twin boys home, Lee's husband, Mark, is a bit protestant of the idea. We don't even know these two boys, we don't even know who they are, we didn't even talk this over, you just all of a sudden bring them in. But still, Lee stays persistent because obviously, given that these two boys have no parents, they need someone to look after them. So ultimately, Mark decides, alright, keep them in, whatever. But a small part of him still feels like it's probably not the best idea. Unbeknownst to Mark and Lee, however, these two boys possess a rather peculiar power, a very strange power, and a very dangerous and deadly one. And the twins intend to use these powers for very sinister purposes, and they also intend to get Mark and Lee's other children, Elena and Ira, in on their plan. Now, eventually, Mark starts to get suspicious of the two boys, and Daniel and Sam know this, so in order to keep him busy and possibly get rid of him, they end up framing him for some very serious crimes. I'm talking very grisly murders. And, as a result, Mark ends up being a suspect in a series of killings. Can Mark prove his innocence while also demonstrating to Lee that these two boys might not be as innocent as they let on? And what exactly do Sam and Daniel have intended? Now, obviously, as someone who grew up reading R.L. Stine's work, I was very excited to read this. And did it deliver in terms of the unbearable suspense and unbridled horror that Stine is known for? Yes, it did. As someone who grew up reading Goosebumps, this was very satisfying to read because there was a lot that Stine kind of was kept ambiguous from the beginning, and as a result, that really made me wonder as to where this book was going and what could possibly result from it. He just left so much to be curious about and so much to for me to like want to discover within the story. Like the whole book, I was just wondering who exactly are these two boys? What exactly do they have planned? And how exactly why exactly they possess these powers that they have? All of these things were stuff I needed to know really need to know more about, and that as a result got made me want to read more and more. And like with any R.L. Stine story, there are a lot of really unexpected plot twists in this. Like I remember some passages I literally had to read twice, kind of do a double take, simply because of how jaw dropping and unbelievable like some of the twists were in this story. And the writing was fairly good too. Like the story was pretty clear. Like I don't think there were any instances where I had to repeat passages other than the ones I was shocked by. And I should also mention that the imagery in this book is really good. Like really, really good. It actually made the book a whole lot more immersive because of it. Like especially during the hurricane, part with the hurricane, R.L. Stine, really did a good job of capturing just how terrifying it would be to be in a situation like that. Overall, this was a really fun book to read with some fairly creepy parts here and there. It was a very immersive story. It kept me on edge and made me really desperately want to know how it was all going to conclude. And it just left me thinking, you know, maybe Arl Stein should write more novels for adults because a lot of the people who grew up reading this stuff are grown up anyway, so he should write more of it. But yeah, that was my review on Red Rain by R.L. Stine, and I really enjoyed it, and I give it a B plus. The only thing preventing it from getting into the A category is because, well, it was a really good story and had some really jarring twists and unexpected surprises here and there. It still wasn't anything like extraordinary like some other books I like, such as Pet Cemetery, White Fang, Frankenstein, but it still was a pretty enjoyable read. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and sub for more content.